Welcome to the Miscellaneous Film Festival, the podcast for curiously curated films. Tonight, we're taking a left turn from the cinema to the theater in this, our Screen to Stage mini film festival.
From the screen to the stage we fly, under spotlights reaching skies, every scene a brand new page, come alive from screen to stage.
My name's Jason, and with me tonight are Matt Kelly from the Geekscape Network and Lucy, a romance novel author, both of whom are terrific fans of Broadway musicals. Hi guys, thanks for being on the show.
Hey.
Hi, thanks for having me.
This has been a great week. Lucy and I have actually spent the whole week watching these various stage adaptations of famous movies and having a glorious time every night, taking notes on each one of them. Matt, how did you enjoy the shows?
You know, I started with the shortest one and kind of built up to the longest one. Creature from the Black Lagoon was interesting, but I was like, oh God, if there's 5 of these, this is going to be a real, it's going to be real.
I would never do that to you.
But then,
I would never do that to you,
it was literally when I got to 9 to 5 was what I watched before Carrie. When I got to 9 to 5, I'm like, okay, this is like a legit musical now. Like not that those weren't legit,
right.
but like, and then I just maybe an hour before I came down here finished Twisted. And I think it was like my appreciation for each one grew more from the one prior to a certain point.
Yes.
Spoiler alert, I did subscribe to a 10-episode podcast about the making of Carrie the musical that I've been listening to this afternoon. So.
Oh yeah. I did a deep dive into that. So I should probably tell everybody the 5 film to stage adaptations we're going to talk about. The first one is Rogers the Musical, the sort of in-universe musical from the Marvel Cinematic Universe that was turned into an actual stage show at Disneyland. Next is Creature from the Black Lagoon, the musical, which was again kind of a theme park show for Universal Studios. Next is Carrie the musical, then 9 to 5 the musical, and finally we ended with the Star Kid production Twisted, which is sort of a wicked take on the story of Jafar from the movie Aladdin. But before we get into those, I'd love to hear what you guys are up to.
I just have the mind of a 16-year-old girl caught in romance all the time. And I make up these little stories in my head, and then I turn them into novels, into little romance novels. I am generally writing about anything queer, and it's more focused on the romance than the erotica. And it's mostly just to fulfill my inner 16-year-old, and it's been going really well.
Yay!
It's really fun. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And Matt, you host 2 of my favorite shows on Geekscape, Horror Movie Night and Christian Cringe.
Thank you. I gave myself, in 2020, I gave myself the title of head of content at Geekscape because we were trying to build a network, and I was like, well, I'll just pick what shows should be on the network. And now it's an official title, so you can do that, people. You can just assign yourself roles. The president does it all the time, so... But I just started with like throwing my own shows on there and grabbing shows that I thought were interesting. And next thing I knew, we had a network with 30 different podcasts on it and a very budding YouTube channel, Geekscape TV, where we host a bunch of different like weekly live streams. We just launched a new show called Internet Supreme Court that is a improv comedy show with some people from Chicago's improv scene and Boston's improv scene, and somehow me, where we are the unelected Supreme Court. We're just as corrupt as the real Supreme Court, and we are judging the pop culture of the day. We're judging memes. We just did our first episode. We did all of our cases involved the history of the Gulf of Mexico.
The Gulf of Mexico.
Yes, we did an episode. I made them watch a vintage commercial from the 80s for a home whirlpool system that is 1,000% for female masturbation. Like when you watch the commercial, there is no ifs, ands, or buts on what this product is actually designed to do. My friend Katie brought us a case of Chubby Bubbles, which is the little girl in the yellow jacket running with the bubbles that has been like memed for 2 decades. But what's crazy about Katie's thing is she tracked down the original photographer and the girl from the photo and interviewed them.
No way.
So
wow.
It's kind of a crazy hour of sketch comedy, improv, etc. We take a 10-minute recess every week, and during that 10-minute recess, we show some animations and sketches pre-taped that some of our friends have done. There's live music. It's kind of a fun hour variety show in that little framework. But yes, I do Christian Cringe, Horror Movie Night, One Hit Thunder, Christmas 365. I produce the podcast YA-OK, which is all about YA novels. It's just anything that I find interesting in the world, I do a podcast about it. One of our bigger ones.
That is fucking cool.
Yeah, one of our bigger ones is Weird Algorithm. It's myself and my buddy Matt, who's the bass player in the band Wheatus. We're just going through Weird Al's entire catalog, one song at a time, and ranking them. And we've had like Paul Scheer's been on our show, which is like absolute insanity to me.
Oh,
like,
wow.
So it's been fun. It's been a really cool experience creating these shows about stuff that I love, and then being able to befriend people that I admire through doing that. So that's the whole Geekscape story in like 2 minutes.
That's the same thesis for this show. I
That is awesome.
just love watching movies, love finding out more about movies, even sideways things like musical adaptations. I just wanted to share these with people who would also get excited so they can find out about it.
I did not expect, like, when you sent me the list of movies, I really was like, man, I'll probably like half of these. And I think that
Sure.
all of them,
Yeah.
even like Creature, which I think is like weird as hell, I have shown that to like 8 people this week. Like, it's like there was something that I pulled from every one of these where I was like, well, I'm not going to forget that I watched this. A few of them I added songs to my Spotify musical playlist. Like, I have a playlist of just musical songs. I'm like, oh, I'm throwing a few more Carries on here. I'm throwing some Rogers on here. So it's a good. It was
Right.
I was really excited to do this journey. So I have to thank you for introducing, I'll say 4.5 things that I didn't know I needed, because I was aware of the Carrie musical. Well, no, I was aware of the Carrie musical, and I knew like 2 or 3 songs from it. So that one was like the only one that wasn't a full blown new discovery for me. But
Sure.
the rest, I was like completely in the dark. I'm kind of glad that Groundhog Day didn't work out, because 9 to 5 was awesome. Like,
No. We lucked out on. We were going to talk about Groundhog Day, which actually, I'll tell you what, it's not as good as 9 to 5, but it is an impressive production. The amount of the movie they get on stage and make work, especially time. It's not actual time travel, but you know what I mean. They make that work on stage, and in a way you would not expect. So no, I really was glad when you said yes, because these are so much fun to see how you can take something that seems to be so big, like something in cinema, and contain it on a stage and but still give it the feeling of the same size. Before we really dive in, I wanted to ask you guys about your experiences with theater. Like, did you guys do theater in high school or performance art in high school?
In high school, I was definitively a stage crew kid. It's
Hell yeah.
It's very
crew rocks.
Yeah. It's really weird because like I have this argument with my girlfriend all the time, but like I see myself as an introvert, which is like a wild thing to say as a person who has a different podcast that drops every day of the week. And then like goes to conventions and does panels and stuff. But like I literally, when I'm done doing a live show, I don't want anyone to touch me or talk to me for like 10 hours. Same I burn that candle in that hour, and then I need like a full replenish. The only time I've ever performed on stage, like in a theatrical way, like I've done like talent shows and I was in bands and stuff, was when my high school did Little Shop of Horrors. I worked out a deal with the director because it was high school. The director was obviously just a teacher that I had in school, and he knew me from stage crew in class, and he knew my somewhat comedic chops. And I was like, I know it's not in the musical, but if I watch and write down the exact stage directions of Bill Murray's scene in the movie, can we add it to the show? And he agreed to that, so I got to play the sadist from the movie Little Shop in my high school's production of Little Shop. And that was so much
first
fun.
of all,
like,
no, congratulations for having the guts to propose adding something to a show, to working your way into it. That is very impressive.
yeah. And the other thing was I refused to do my senior year's show because we were doing Grease, which like I got nothing against Grease, but they had done Grease the year before I came to that high school, and I was like, do we truly need to do Grease every 4 to 5 years?
I love that you have, but you have that backstage like producer mentality of like, I see that this is a cash grab, and we're not doing art anymore.
I was like, there are so many incredible musicals that don't get any attention, because the first show I ever did was Anything Goes, and it's still like one of my absolute favorite shows because I love. My grandfather like raised me on Marx Brothers, so that like zippy, like screwball comedy, fast-paced dialogue. I was just like, this is the greatest thing ever. And like being on stage crew and having to make the stage at your school the front of a cruise ship was like such a crazy experience. And the next year, something.
Wait, what?
Yeah, because it's all on a cruise ship, so we had to build.
That's right.
Yeah, we had to put all these like we had to keep adding onto the stage and then building railings, and we had to literally make the front of a cruise ship. Something that would have been great for us to do for this collection of 5 was we did Footloose the musical my sophomore year, which is also like an incredible musical, but like we had to make like a burger joint. We had to build our own version of stained glass for the church. Like we were getting to do all this cool creative stuff in stage crew. Obviously Little Shop is like a stage crew dream. So to then be like, hey, we're doing Grease. And it's like, cool. We have to make a high school look like a high school. How fun. It's like such like the most exciting thing that I heard anyone from stage crew say was we got to bring a car into the school. It's like, awesome. That's one day of fun for the 6 months that we're working on this play. So and again, it sounds like I absolutely hate Grease, and I don't. I just was like, there's so many exciting things that we could be doing that's exciting and new, and it's fun for stage crew, and it's fun for everybody. And it was, I protested. I did not do stage crew my senior year.
I was only ever in one play in high school, and I was trying to remember what it was, and I think it was Anything Goes.
Yeah, it's got like friendship.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Friendship. That's the perfect friendship. That's what.
Yes.
Spoiler alert: I had a lot of fun with 9 to 5, and I think it's because it has that. Of all the ones that we watched, it has that classic 30s musical feel more than any of the other ones, I think.
My mother is huge into musicals, so I grew up going down. So did you ever go to Chestnut Theater?
I haven't been to Chestnut. I do a lot of like
Philly?
media theater. I'm like in the outskirts of Philly, so it's like media theater, the Swarthmore's Players Club, a lot of those like small shows. But I know Chestnut.
So I grew up going to shows there and then shows in the city. And then my sister was always in the plays in high school. And so when I got in there, I sort of did it my first year. But I was a band geek.
Yeah.
So I spent the rest of the time in the pit orchestra. Which is just a better place for me.
There's a quote. There's a quote in American Pie 2, which is, a classic film to always cite. But there's a line there's a Jason Biggs line where he says, "I've always been a band geek. I just never joined the band." And that was kind of me in high school. Like,
I'm with it.
All right, so now that we've completely derailed Jace's show, let's get back on track. Sorry about that.
No worries. This has been fun. We're going to start with, like I said, the 5 we're talking about are Rogers the Musical, Creature from Black Lagoon, Carrie, 9 to 5, and Twisted. And one thing I wanted to address first was, because these are all adaptations from movies, how well of an adaptation each one was, and was it a worthwhile adaptation? Should these have been made? Because one of the sentiments we expressed at the beginning was some trepidation going into watching these.
Yeah.
And I think that's fair to say, we've made a musical of something that was never a musical before. Seems like a potential for a cash grab, or someone who doesn't know what they're doing is just trying to get another butt in another seat to pay for another ticket.
So I'll say that I think 9 to 5 is the most successful adaptation transition. Like, I think they really nailed the plot of that movie and turning it into a musical. Like, Carrie is fascinating to me because with Carrie, I almost think that show would be better with all of the same songs and most of the same plot beats if it wasn't based on Carrie. You know what I mean? Like if it was just like if it was just like a tragedy about like a high school girl getting bullied and having like this weird family life outside of the school, like I think that in any other world this would have been a huge hit and it would have gone really, really far. But like when you're attaching also within all of this, she has telekinesis and is going to kill everybody at the end of it. It like almost makes it feel silly when it shouldn't, because the songs in that are really good. But like the adaptation part, I think almost hurts Carrie the musical more than if it was just an original story in that one.
The fun thing about when you're talking about some of the fun kind of being lost, there is an alternative you could watch, and that would be Matilda. I realize Matilda is about a little girl bullied at school, albeit by a teacher, with all her friends backing her up, but who has telekinetic powers.
Yeah, I mean, or even like I think the problem with Carrie, when we were done watching this, I added more songs from Carrie than any other one of these musicals to my playlist, because I really think that the songbook is awesome, but it was like so painfully serious while being so ridiculous that we've made a musical about Carrie, that like even if it took more of the tone of like a show that I love that flopped hard on Broadway similar to Carrie was Be More Chill, but like if it had that,
I don't know that one,
tongue-in-cheek attitude, so Be More Chill is, I love Be More Chill, I adore Be More Chill, and it's about a kid who wants to be popular in school, and they convince him to basically implant this chip in his brain that will tell him everything he needs to do to be cool. But then the chip keeps trying to convince him to tell other kids to do it, and you find out that it's part of a giant hive mind that's trying to like take over the world. Like it takes like a little bit of a Little Shop of Horrors twist, but it's so campy and aware of all of the tropes that it's hitting along the way. And I think that if Carrie had leaned into the campiness the way you see like an Evil Dead the musical or a lot of these other horror movie musicals where they are acknowledging that it's absurd that we're doing a musical about this thing, it would have worked. But like it's that combination of like, these are beautifully written songs, this is like incredible staging, but it's still a musical about Carrie, and like that's such a weird hurdle to get over.
I think part of the seriousness came from the author, because it was Lawrence D. Cohen who wrote the script for the 1976 movie. Felt like there was more he wanted to tell, more he wanted to dive into with Carrie's character, and so he decided to write this musical to kind of satisfy that itch. And it was perhaps his earnestness to make it specifically about that story and not get general enough, like you're talking about, where it could be a more universally appreciated, where it's really hyper focused on Carrie.
It's also worth asking if there was even a precedent at that point. Had there even really been like a campy movie adaptation musical up until that point? Like now at this point in time, where you just walk down Broadway and you'll find 3 campy musicals based on a movie, but like in 1988,
that's what you're expecting from the musical.
In 1988, was there really that much of a precedent yet of taking something like a horror movie and being like, now we're going to do it as a musical? Like,
no, I think everything was being done as it had been originally presented. There was not the idea of taking another perspective on it, which is what I appreciate about any musical version of something serious. It's okay, now we're going to have a little bit of fun with it. What I know, you said you were starting a podcast of the behind the scenes of the development of Carrie.
Out for Blood. I only listened to the first episode because I was like, I don't want to ruin too much information before we do this, honestly.
One little fun tidbit that you'll get into that I'm sure you'll love. When they were developing it, they were looking for a director, and the director they found was this guy from the UK who worked with the Royal Shakespeare Company, and he didn't have a frame of reference for how to stage something in an American high school or what all those dynamics were. So they told him, just think Grease. Let that be your keystone. And he went back to the UK and talked to the production team there. And when the US team came to see what he had put together, there were togas and columns and this bare minimum stage.
Grease.
Yes. He thought we're doing classic theater.
That's amazing.
And they had to stop and redo a bunch of stuff to get it back on track.
One of the things that I noticed about Carrie, even specifically, is that even though the music was good, I did appreciate it, but it wasn't something that I would want to sing along to later.
No.
It was very technically difficult music, and I want a fun ditty to sing along to. And 9 to 5 I thought was so impressive because they did actually sing. They sort of rode that line perfectly between technical difficulty in the music, but not so difficult that I couldn't sing along, that I couldn't remember the tune later.
I also shockingly thought that about Rogers. I thought Rogers was like shockingly catchy in a way that I wasn't expecting it to be.
Well, it was Disney.
Yes.
It was a theme park production.
Yeah.
It was meant to just be cotton candy for 30 minutes in between whatever roller coaster you were going to go to
but
next.
compare that to the other amusement park one that we watched. Like, I
Oh,
can't
yeah,
tell you
yeah.
a single song that happened in The Creature from the
No.
Black Lagoon. Like,
Well, for a while afterwards, I was just going, Black Lagoon!
Yeah.
Black Lagoon!
Well,
'Cause
and,
that's
like,
the only thing
this
I
is
can
my
remember.
wild hot take about Creature from the Black Lagoon. I don't know which one of our many categories it's going to fall into, so I guess adaptations will be the best category for it.
Do it.
But
Do it.
there's something that bothers me about this actually being part of Universal. And what I mean by that is, like, if this was at some queer black box theater, I would have been like, this is fucking brilliant. Like, it's so campy and it's so over the top. But, like, it being produced by Universal for the Universal Studios show almost feels, like, inauthentic in a way that I can't quite put my finger on, because I'm just like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing something so weird and campy as the stage show at Universal, where you're supposed to be, like, celebrating this property with all this history? Like, it's
Well,
it's
I
really
can tell
weird.
you.
Like,
I can tell you the behind the scenes of that.
please, because Wikipedia
Universal
has nothing
Studios-
for me.
Well, Universal Studios had just had some success with The Mummy and The Mummy 2, the Brendan Fraser movies.
Yeah.
And so they were getting the gears turning to do the whole, like, dark universe thing that they started to do later on. So it's like, okay, this is good. What else do we have for free that's just laying around that we can develop? We've revamped The Mummy. And they go, okay, Creature from the Black Lagoon. How are we going to inject that back into the public consciousness? And they thought, you know what? A 30-minute theme park musical.
Like, if this was John Waters Presents Creature from the Black Lagoon, the musical, it would
Alright.
be the greatest thing
God.
I've ever watched.
John Waters would have been good. Instead, they got the guy who produced Forbidden Broadway. The guy who developed the show Forbidden Broadway, who was used to doing parody, who was used to, like,
Because it gets
injecting
real-
jokes where they didn't need to be.
Yeah, like,
instead of
it's
being
just
contextual.
it's so weird tonally. But it also, like, there's something to admire because it feels like there was no one telling them what they could or couldn't do. Like, the fact that it ends with your main character getting eaten by a 25-foot Creature from the Black Lagoon prop is insane. Like,
I'll tell you, from doing creative writing in high school and college, that is, oh shit, I forgot to do my creative writing project.
Yeah.
I have 2 hours before class. Type. Okay, now I've worked myself into a corner. How do I end this? The monster becomes 20 feet tall and eats everyone. Done.
Which, again, and I don't know why, it's so weird that I have such a line in the sand about this. Because if all of those things happen in Dick's the Musical, it's brilliant. But for some
Oh my
reason,
goodness,
the fact
Dick's
that it's
the
happening
Musical!
at a Universal Studios stage show, I'm just like, why are we doing this? Like, why are we?
Wait a minute. Are we going to talk about Sewer Boys real quick?
I have an ongoing rant about the store Hot Topic, and now I'm fine with it. It's been around for it. But when my children were young, I definitely was like, hey, Hot Topic is a cheat.
Yeah.
When I was young, I had to go down to South Street and get what I needed from there. I didn't get to cheat and go to Hot Topic.
And that's what this is. It feels like a cheat.
Yeah.
This is a show that you're supposed to find out about through, like, a bunch of illegal channels that people are like. It's not supposed to be part of your ticket of admission to ride a roller coaster. Is that you
it's
have
like
to get
the
to
first time MTV hosted a rave.
Yeah.
We were like, well,
Well, and
what
then
a bummer.
a counterpoint to this would be Rogers the Musical, also a theme park show. It come from a different place. Like, The Creature of the Black Lagoon was not in the public consciousness. No one was crying out for this. Rogers was developed because they had written one song to put in Hawkeye, just for funsies, with none of this in mind. And the fans really liked that one song, and so they said, can we now monopolize off that and get butts in seats and get people to pay for tickets?
Yeah, but I guess the flip side is I would be saying the same thing if Rogers the Musical ended with Thanos eating Steve Rogers. But like it's not that campy and weird. Like Rogers the Musical follows way more of a normal what you would expect to see at a theme park
it has a
musical
heart.
performance. Yeah, like
it has a character, it has a basis.
It just like, and maybe this is coming from the fact that I love the Creature from the Black Lagoon. Easily my favorite of all of the Universal monsters, and that show just feels like, isn't this so dumb? It's so dumb that people like this. And like,
I mean, at best of a compliment, it was parody, it was Forbidden Broadway. But I went, I didn't want this.
Yeah, but then the
asking
flip
for
side
this.
is like the string, the wire work for the swimming is incredible. Like that is like
there's so
probably the
much
most
to
incredible
love about the
thing out
show.
of all of these 5 shows that we watched.
And the athleticism
Yeah, like
of that person singing.
like, that was insane. And I was like, more of this, less of most of it. And like I did like the last like 5 minutes is so crazy that like that's what I kept showing people. I'm like, you have to watch how this show ends.
Yeah.
but also the songs just kind of sucked. Like there was like no good songs in Creature.
All of these are direct adaptations of a movie that had been out before, or several movies in the case of Rogers. But Twisted is like the wicked version of Aladdin, taking the point of view of Jafar as the hero. That as an adaptation, albeit it wasn't a direct 1-to-1, I would say would only be second to 9 to 5.
I mean,
because it brought so much more in. It gave you the whole story, but then it not only gave you another perspective on just Jafar because we're doing a twist on that, but made you reconsider Aladdin and everything else that was going on before that.
I almost feel like Twisted didn't fit in with the rest of these because it feels like such a wildly original thing where it's working within the framework of the Disney Aladdin movie, but it is like so its own thing. Like it would be the same as saying that Wicked Part 1 is an adaptation of The Wizard of Oz. Like it's such its own original thing that it's not.
I will concede that this kind of breaks the theme.
Yeah.
I was just so excited
to
watch it again.
I watched it, and then my girlfriend came back from getting a tattoo, and I was like, you have to watch the opening song of this show, like, right now. And I started it from the beginning within minutes of finishing it, because I was like, this is so funny. And then I obviously did a very quick deep dive on Star Kid, because I was like, who are these people?
This is the first time you've heard of Star Kid.
I've never heard of Star Kid at all. This was like a whole new
You're going to have so much fun with all their other shows.
I subscribe to their YouTube channel so I can go through all of them, because this was like spoiler alert, this was like the win of all the wins for me. Like I was texting so many people about Twisted and how they need to watch it.
This is also a special joy that is kind of a theater kid thing, because movies are mass marketed. They are shipped to everyone's local cinema, so everyone's able to see the same movies at the same time. Most theater shows you only have access to the ones that could possibly be happening in your area.
Yeah.
Or if you take a trip to Broadway to see the big major one that has managed to get into popular culture that everyone's talking about. So it's still a little bit underground sometimes when you find shows like this. So to find somebody else and pass it on, it's like finding your favorite band. Like, oh wait, you've also heard of the band, or even better, you haven't.
Yeah,
let me turn you on to this.
I wanna. This has been a thing that I've been proposing forever, and I'm sure I'm not the first person to propose it. But when Disney Plus dropped Hamilton, and it was this like beautifully shot live show that was like a combination of like a live performance and like a performance with no audience to get like the close-ups that they needed, I'd be willing to pay $75 to $100 if Broadway could produce these types of things for me to watch from my living room without all of the costs that it takes to go to New York to see it, because it's not the price. Like if it's just the price tag, fine. But it's like I'm paying $100 to sit in the highest seat in the entire theater to barely see what's happening. And I still have to pay transportation. It's a long drive, so now I'm having to pay $50 to $60 for a meal while I'm in New York. Like, it's a really expensive trip, and I'm probably not going by myself. So it's like this is like accrued upon a bunch of people versus like if I can pay $100 to see what the show looks like from a front seat view from the comfort of my house,
or with multiple angles, you can get the close-ups you want. Yeah,
I would love for that to be something that they could offer, because there's so many shows that I want to see that are just like that. It's never going to happen. And that Hamilton thing felt like it opened up this door of like, here's a way similar to how I could go to a Fathom Events and see an opera. Like,
that's what I was just gonna say. Do you go to those? Because
I used to.
I love that happens.
Yeah, like
that's when I first saw the curious incident of the dog in the nighttime, and it blew me away how they did that.
Yeah, I want but I guess it's just too big of a ticket for Broadway. But like,
I think they can do it.
Yeah.
Because you can with VR with the Oculus.
yeah,
I don't know if you've tried it before, but you can go to full on concerts.
yeah, it's just
it.
like I just
all they
wish they
do
would
is
do
just-
it.
Yeah, and they're poorly done, and it's still. I mean, you're often like right at waist level staring at some singer, but
Wait, for some singers, that's the best part.
Yeah.
Elvis Presley.
Yeah, who are we seeing?
woo. But I mean, and sometimes it just depends where their placement is, but it's still amazing, and I talk about that. And I think that they will eventually realize what an amazing revenue stream that is for them.
Yeah.
And then what an amazing opportunity it is for everybody to be able to consume the art.
100%.
And I think there will still be plenty of people who want to pay to see it in person.
Having a concert DVD doesn't make people stop seeing a band.
Right.
Like,
No.
like
Right.
putting out a
think
Netflix
they
comedy
will.
special doesn't mean that no one comes to that comedian's next live show. It just
Yeah.
helps more people discover who that person or that show or that
Right.
thing
Yeah.
is.
And it's literally the cost of like 4 seats on one night, and then that's it.
yeah.
That's
And we all right here have already expressed as people who like musical theater, like we have a little bit of hesitance when someone says, "Oh, there's a new musical out based on this." Like, oh, what is
Yeah.
that going to mean?
Yeah. But that goes back to Star Kid, which was easily the best produced of the videos that we watched. In the sense that it had
Oh, wait.
angles and shit. Like 9
Oh,
to 5,
videos.
the biggest strike against 9 to 5 was how many times the person
was pirated,
bootlegging
yeah.
it hid their camera while the show was happening.
Yes,
Like,
they were trying to do it just during the blackouts or scene changes, but
Yeah.
they were still. That was. I mean, what do you want me to do?
no, it's not your fault, but I was like,
Yeah.
when I got to that was like the perfect last one to watch, because I had watched so many just static shot musicals for like 6 hours that to have this like beautifully produced, getting close-ups and like it really was like, God, why aren't we doing this more? Why are
You really don't want to see Prince Ahmed's bare buttocks from the back row.
No.
You want to be right there.
yeah, I want to be right up there. I want to see the back of his balls.
that glossy butt cheek.
Yeah. Oh,
Well,
God.
that's a good segue to talking about the sets and costumes, which you already touched on. Creature of the Black Lagoon definitely seemed to be the one that really went for it.
Yeah.
As far as sets go.
I mean, that creature prop at the end is nothing short of impressive.
What we're talking about is there's literally like a 20-foot tall, like waist to head animatronic Creature of the Black Lagoon that rolls onto the stage, and it's mind blowing.
It's really, really cool. I would say that was my favorite. That and Carrie, I think, had the coolest stage shows, like just looking at the sets. But
Oh.
not, I mean, Creature and Carrie, though, I would say not my favorite costuming. The costuming all the way has to
Yeah.
go to Rogers and Twist It. Like, those are just like, and actually, 9 to 5 did a great job
No,
with setting
that's
the
what-
time period with the clothing.
I was going to jump in. 9 to 5 did a brilliant job with the costuming, because what I did after I watched 9 to 5, I was so jazzed. I was singing those songs. And I literally switched right over and watched the movie again and was taking notes like, oh my goodness, they copied almost every outfit that Dolly Parton had been wearing.
Yeah.
They and where they couldn't get the exact replicas because it wouldn't necessarily work on stage. Some of Jane Fonda's costumes, really you had to see close up to appreciate.
Yeah.
They were getting that same feel.
I
They
know
were
we're-
taking notes from the production.
I know that we're going to get to the performances and characters later, but I do have to shout out while we're talking about the costuming being perfect. Also, all of these actresses are nailing the vibe of the characters from the original movie and their performances
absolutely.
so perfectly too. So it's like that perfect combination of, that's why I said I think that's if we're talking about a pure adaptation, 9 to 5 is heads and shoulders above everything else that we watched of just
Agreed.
hitting it out of the park, of getting everything that makes that movie enjoyable and making it work with songs that, like, there's not a single song in that 9 to 5 musical that doesn't absolutely fit the vibe of the movie, where you're like, yeah, if the movie was a musical, these are the exact songs that would have been in that movie from the beginning.
All those songs were written by Dolly Parton.
Yeah, of course. Why wouldn't it be?
And
Listen, we're talking about a woman who wrote Jolene and I Will Always Love You in the same night. You think she can't shit out perfect songs for 9 to 5?
that your tone right there was exactly what I had to say to myself earlier today when I was double checking my facts. It's like I was gonna try to find some article to explain how they got Dolly Parton involved in this project, and the first thing I found was Dolly Parton developed the show 9 to 5 and then got other people involved to produce it. And I was like, duh, of course she did.
Yeah. You're talking about
She's
a
the most
woman who literally
industrious-
built her own
Yeah.
theme park just to give people in her town work.
And didn't make it narcissistic or pretentious.
No. It's named Dollywood, and that's about the extent of the Dolly Parton there at that point.
Yeah.
Like,
I
it's
love her.
Dollywood, side note, amazing theme park if you have never been. Worth the visit. Amazing rides, great food, reasonable cost to get in. Dolly rules. Dolly for
Dolly
president.
rules. Dolly for president. Oh my God. Yes. That should be one of your next podcast
Yeah.
projects. Please do
Dolly
it.
Parton for
Oh,
president.
Dolly for president. Yes.
I mean, we could
You
do.
could.
We're doing worse right now. So.
Yeah. Listen, maybe that's how I follow the Weird Al podcast. We were talking about doing green data, but I think Dolly for president is even better.
Oh my God. I am obsessed. Please do it.
I was going to compliment Twisted for its set and its staging, which it's not outstanding. It is the smallest stage, the most minimal set of all of these, but they make everything work.
Yeah,
At no point did I not understand where we were, when we were, and why we were because of lack of staging or lack of set. It instantly understandable by the costumes and who was speaking.
Yeah.
And the story and the writing kept you up to speed and on the same page as a show throughout.
For sure. Oh, I mean, I would almost argue that if we're really talking about the costuming, Twisted is the most overall impressive because it has the least to work with.
Like, make the most of it.
Yeah, comparing Twisted to Rogers is like wildly unfair, right? Because you're looking at a budget of
money,
like
theme park money,
$450,000 raised on a crowdsourcing site versus the entire Disney machine funding it. So, like, of course, Rogers is going to look like movie-ready costumes. But when I
really looking at Rogers,
yeah,
they went really basic.
Listen, I think one of the notes I wrote down was, "You've got to be kidding me with this Hulk." Like, when they introduced the Hulk, and it's just a guy in a green T-shirt. I'm like, this is the best you can do, Disney.
Right. I'm gonna go back to the topic of adaptation, because the thing is that song "Save the City" was written in isolation just for Hawkeye. It was supposed to be kind of a one and done, and fans loved it so much that they decided to expand on that one song and turn it into a 30-minute musical. And so I think they felt they wanted to stay authentic to the very basic staging they did in the Hawkeye episode, so they didn't improve the costumes when they brought the stage show on. And I agree with you, that was a choice that I think would have been fair. They could have upgraded all the Avengers costumes for the stage show.
Yeah, I don't think there was anyone in the audience who would have been like, "Oh, I'm so mad that the Hulk actually looks like the Hulk."
Right, no. Or that Ant-Man isn't just some breakdancer with a backwards cap.
Yeah, but no, you're right, because like when I was showing my girlfriend the first song, she was even calling out stuff where she's like she called out stuff that I missed, where she's like, "I love that one extra's dressed like Apu when he's dressed like a girl in Aladdin."
Yeah.
Like that it's the exact costume. Like it was so specific to like tiny little details and being so like absolutely precise with their decisions. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I don't think I'm changing my mind that I think Creature and Carrie maybe had more impressive sets. But you're right. When I think back to every other black box theater presentation I've ever seen, none of them had sets quite like that. Like that actually felt like a lot of time and money and effort was put into what they were still able to do on a very, very, very modest budget.
I thought that the Star Kids thing was so impressive. And if I had a superpower, it would be to be able to transport myself into the past, into a writer's room, to sort of watch how entertained they are as they like think of these little details that they add. And of those 5 shows, I would have most wanted to be in the room of Twisted and hearing like them be like, "Oh my God, what if we did this extra thing? It would be so funny." Because they added so much and it was so good. It was so clever.
I was listening to a podcast and one of the guys was a writer for the Golden Globes on the podcast. And I forget how this came up, but he said something along the lines of, when I wrote for the Golden Globes, there was a point in the writer's room where we thought, should we watch every movie that's nominated for Best Picture? And the ultimate decision was, no, we shouldn't, because most of the people watching from home have not seen every movie nominated for Best Picture. So if we watch those movies, we're going to get so into the weeds of specific jokes that it's going to go over everybody's head. But if we're pulling from the minimal knowledge that we have of all of those movies,
from just the trailer or something,
yeah, the jokes will hit for everybody. And I think Twisted goes in the complete opposite logic of everybody has watched Aladdin a trillion times, so we can write these hyper specific jokes about millisecond moments. Like the scene where the guard shows up to tell Jafar everything that happened trying to get the loaf of bread. And it's like, it is just bringing up every memory that you have of the one jump ahead scene from Aladdin so vividly. And it's
all
like
those guys who fell into the manure cart.
Like it's like you can, I'm sure that writer's room, they must have just had Aladdin on in a loop while they're crafting this and being like, oh, we got to make this reference. We got to pull this thing in. We got to pull this thing in. Like it is so specifically designed for Disney adult nerds like myself that I was like, this is so beyond the normal campy stage show, because you have to be smart. You know what I mean? Like, I like Evil Dead the musical as much as everybody else, but like there's that certain level of, some people get really lazy and then call it camp. And like that, like camp is not, hey, this is dumb and lazy. Camp is like its own other thing. And at its core, it's authentic and it comes from a passionate love of something. And this is like the most passionate love for its source material.
Well, that's why I wanted to give Twisted a little bit more credit as an adaptation, because it does stay true, even though it's a sideways story. It's retelling Aladdin exactly how it happened.
Yeah, you need the knowledge of that movie to enjoy it on the same level. Like I think Twisted, you could show someone 9 to 5 who has never seen the movie 9 to 5 and they're going to purely enjoy it for what it is. But if you showed someone Twisted who had never seen the cartoon Aladdin, I think that it's funny, but they're like
they wouldn't know why everyone's
lost.
laughing.
You know what would really make you be lost was Rogers.
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah. Imagine watching Rogers with no context.
I have no context.
Oh no.
I've never seen.
Oh no. Rogers was, again, like I said, I started with Creature, which I think we're all in agreement that Creature's probably the bottom of the barrel of the 5.
Oh, while we're still talking about costumes, I wanted to give a big shout out to Creature.
Yeah.
Because to have that one actor, his name was Todd Fournier. A typical theme park show would have a revolving cast, so different people playing it throughout the day. They would have different time slots or different days of the week. He was always the Creature, every performance, every day that it ran.
That's insane.
And it was a beautiful costume, a full body costume that he had to do wire acrobatics in and sing and dance.
Impressive.
That's too much. That's also like mildly cruel, because he probably was getting paid amusement park minimum wage or something. And Rogers was like a step above, but it was still like, what is it? Like 9 to 5 was when I was finally kind of like, all right, this ride's gonna get fun. And like 9 to 5 into Carrie into Twisted was like I feel like I watched it at the exact proper progression that someone should have watched these 5 projects. But yeah, no, to Lucy's point, like Rogers is a lot. For something that's under 40 minutes, it feels like 2 hours at certain points of it where I'm just
They even have a song called What You Missed where they have Nick Fury singing, trying to fill Steve in on 5 or 6 movies.
I was just exhausted by and
you have to have seen those movies to even get what that song is talking about. The song does not help anybody.
No, it's like that was one where I this like opening like Andrew's sister's song, I was like, if this is how it's gonna be, This is going to be great.
I loved that.
But then we get to Nick Cave basically rapping the plots of like every Marvel movie, and I'm like, how far we have strayed away from the humble beginnings of this stage show.
It was fan service. Basically, if you already had seen everything, loved everything, it was a chance to see a little bit more.
It was just Rogers the Musical is 37 minutes total, and I struggled through 37 minutes, whereas Twisted was 2 hours and 17 minutes, and I could have watched it 3 times in a row before I would ever want to go back for Rogers. And it's just because, like you said, it's kind of fan servicey and it's too much, and the songs don't like it. That first song does a lot of heavy lifting for Rogers, because that first song is better than any song in Creature. But it is still like, again, it wasn't until 9 to 5 where I was like, okay, now we're hitting some songs that are going to be like stuck in my brain, that are going to live there.
When they're having the fantasy, when the 3 leads get high,
oh, it's so fun,
and decide to fantasize about doing in their boss because he is such a lying, hypocritical, chauvinistic. They each fantasize about different ways to kill him, and the songs and dances that go with that, like Judy's song "Dance of Death," was amazing. We're watching a stage show, and because they have that rear projection screen where they can put up just whatever they want to show, just a digital image. Normally, it had what looked like office windows because it takes place in an office building. All of a sudden, it's slanted like it has a Dutch angle, and everyone's dressed in black, and it's sharp white light on the screen. They just turned this into a fucking Hitchcock film.
Yeah.
On stage out of nowhere. It was amazing.
One of the songs that really I liked quite a bit, even though it's sleazy as all hell, is "Here for You," the song where the boss is seducing Dolores. But it's like that song just works. Like, it works in that perfect way that it's supposed to, where it's like uncomfortable while still being a banger of a song for a musical. Like, 9 to 5 walks a really interesting line the whole time, but like you said, it's all songs written by Dolly, and she's such a phenomenal songwriter and
her life experiences. When I think about her life experiences in the industry, we've all seen the interviews with her saying, yeah, they make fun of me, but she just sort of uses whatever she needs to.
She's the one who's ahead of the joke because she's so fucking funny. She'll say about her shows that when you come to see Dolly Parton, everybody gets a balcony seat. And we're all laughing, and she's not the butt of the joke because she owns it.
She owns it, and she's just so brilliant, and she's so smart, and she's not out to prove that she's brilliant, but she just is brilliant, and she just is so approachable, and so imagining what somebody like her went through in the industry, and then just remembering that's who wrote this song is so good.
Yeah, that was probably my favorite. So, I mean, obviously the 9 to 5 song from the movie is great, but
and the
I'm
way
not
they
counting
executed
that.
it, making it a chorus number. All these different people doing all the different routines when they wake up in the morning, especially one guy who all of him woke up that morning.
Yeah, that was a great little bit. Him running to the bathroom. Got a chuckle out of me. Carrie was the only one of these shows that I actually had already had one of the songs in my musical playlist on Spotify.
Which one?
The opening track, In. I love the song In so much. And I thought this about In. I thought this about the song Carrie. There was another one that I really liked. Maybe it was Unsuspecting Heart. There's another one that I really, really liked. But what I kept thinking with the songs in Carrie was that it was actually shocking to me that it was from 1988 because, In...
Oh, the one
In
we saw
feels newer. We watched the 2012 version, I know. But,
it also was a revival, so they had updated some of the songs. And
okay, that might be fair, because I was going to say, it sounds more modern. Like, the performances of these songs feel like something you would hear in the 2010. So that makes sense if they kind of upped the quality of the songs overall. But some of those songs really stood out for me. But obviously, to go back to Twisted for just a second, that's the one that has the most songs that I'm going to be thinking about regularly, to the point that the final song, all of these songs are so fucking funny. And then we get to this last song between Jafar and Jasmine where they know that they're related, and it's breaking your heart. It's
Yeah.
like
Oh,
shattering
yeah.
your heart suddenly
Yes.
after
Well,
every
and
goofy ass song imaginable. Like,
his duet with Sherazade
yeah.
about them falling in love was that
It's
is
like the
relationship
line
goals.
that it walked with the songs was so phenomenal.
It's very good
and
writing, very
it's-
intricate lyrics.
It was really, really tight.
And when, I mean, this is not the Creature from the Black Lagoon hate show at all, but those songs were written with lines that didn't make any sense, that were just supposed to be punchline rhymes that didn't have anything to do with the show.
Yeah.
I really felt like whoever wrote those songs wasn't actually tell a story or evoke emotion or tell us anything about the characters.
It felt a little like, so with South Park, I hear all these stories about like the guys in South Park will sometimes just see how much they can get away with before they're told that they can't. And that's kind of what the Creature musical felt like, that it was like this first draft to see how far we can get away with stuff, and then no one said that they couldn't get away with it, so they just went with it anyway. Whereas like Twisted, as crazy and out there as Twisted is, there's so much restraint in what they're doing at the same time, because they are trying to tell a story and they are trying to hit emotional beats. And like, yes, you're doing Wicked with Jafar, and the point being that like, similarly to The Wizard of Oz, you have to take so many artistic liberties to twist and change the story to actually work. Again, Wicked, like, we are all crying our eyes out every time we hear Defying Gravity, because it's a beautiful song.
Yeah.
And that's what they were able to do with this. Yeah, it meant, and the funniest to me is Twisted. Like, that's
what I was just going to bring up.
Bringing
with all the villains come out.
Villain, and then everybody still hates Cruella de Vil because she is the hardest to defend as a villain. It's
everyone. It's like for a split second they give everybody one or two verses to say how as a villain they were actually the good guy. Ursula was supposedly a better ruler than Triton, and then he cast her out. Scar from Lion King shows up saying he was trying to break up racial segregation by including the hyenas in the lion's kingdom, but then Mustafa brought back segregation and ate all his cubs.
Yeah.
And so we're getting sympathy for all these villains, and then Cruella de Vil shows up and says, all I wanted to do was make a coat out of dead puppies. And you're like, no, and they turn on her because she's obviously still the villain.
Yeah. It's so funny because we did get the movie Cruella with Emma Stone, which I thought was a very fun movie. But again, at the end of the day, it's like, you still can't convince me that she's not a monster. Like,
it's the story of how she turned into a monster.
Yeah.
She was sympathetic, but by the time we get to 101 Dalmatians, that's out the door.
What I really noted from the point of view of a person who's like consuming the stuff, I did appreciate the Universal Studios, the Black Lagoon and the Rogers for the sort of poppiness. They weren't for me. I didn't love Carrie. I guess when I go to watch something, I want to be able to sing along to the songs easily, like I said earlier. So I just didn't love that. But I did appreciate the level of talent that was in it.
Yeah, I feel like when we get to the last thing here about the performances and the characters, I think there's a lot more praise to be thrown to Carrie at that moment.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Well, that's
sure.
I mean, you might as well get into it. Carrie had two outstanding performers that I want to call out. Keaton Whitaker, who played Carrie White, and Alice Ripley, who played her mother, Margaret White. Both of them really brought so much heart and depth to the songs they were singing.
The actress that played the bully, Chris, I was also just kind of floored by her performance, especially on the song. Like, she has her own song in the show about why she is the way that she is. That I thought was just
why she's so evil.
Yeah, like I thought that was really, really well done. Tessa Archer. I thought Tessa Archer was a very good Chris. Again, like we said, the three leads in 9 to 5 are all, I mean, they're just channeling the characters from the movie to perfection in such a beautiful way.
I thought I was watching Dolly.
Yeah, I really did too. Oh,
that was
so
Megan Hilty as Dorothy Rhodes. I know it was kind of a burden of the show that people would expect to see a Dolly Parton like character, And so she had to be doing an impersonation and not so much her own thing, but she knocked it out of the park.
Well, and I also have to say Violet, being played by Allison Janney, who, to me, I'm just like, I love Drop Dead Gorgeous. I love her little bit part in 10 Things I Hate About You, and she is just perfection in the role of Violet. So, like, it's always fun when you see, like, these kind of, there's a good amount of actresses who are stage actors that just the camera also loves them, so they always they're never going to be the star of a movie, but they're the most memorable bit character in some of your favorite movies. So like getting to actually see Allison Janney in a like starring lead role was so fun for me throughout all of
she was
watching
amazing.
9 to 5.
And to the Broadway credits, Megan Hilty had also played Glinda in Wicked on Broadway, and Stephanie J. Block, who played Judy Burnley, had been in the touring company and on Broadway as Elphaba for several years in Wicked. That was the kind of level of skill they were bringing to 9 to 5 of all things.
Yeah.
Mark Kudish, who played the villain in 9 to 5, he has a routine, again, super misogynistic, because that's his character, called Always a Woman, which he's performing in the scene where he's tied up by our 3 leads, got handcuffs, leg cuffs, and he's managing to do this whole soft shoe kind of song and dance while in bondage gear and while attached to wires, so that sometimes he's being jerked up into the air all of a sudden to punctuate certain points. It's
insane. As
a performer, he was making that work and making that really entertaining, all the while being toxic. And
we had talked about, a special kind of cardio training that, often like pop stars and boy bands, go through, where they run on a treadmill and sing. And in both that scene, that guy, and also in Black Lagoon, being able to sing while doing acrobatics. Yeah.
Insane.
It was really impressive.
And then, I guess we keep coming back. Like this episode's borderline just the Go Watch Twist It podcast.
Yeah.
It's so phenomenal.
I'm going to put links to all these shows
My favorite.
in the comments. Yeah.
I don't even know how to like limit to a single performance in Twisted. Every single person is nailing the comedic beats. They're nailing the acting beats. They're nailing the singing. Like, every performance is good. Between your douchey Aladdin, you're like actually start to buy what the narrative is trying to tell you about Jafar at a certain point.
And that's also the credit of Dylan Saunders as Jafar. He is carrying that show, not because there's any lack of effort from anybody else, but he has to be on stage 90 to 95% of the time. And he is always giving everything.
His face.
To every song.
His facial expressions. I think he could have just done it without even speaking. Obviously not, but my God, his face. So good.
Now, I want to ask about a little bit about Star Kid behind the scenes real fast, and maybe you'll be able to tell me, because I did like very quick research, and I know that they're basically this small independent company that does these types of pop culture based shows, and their main thing is that they crowdfund the idea, they do it for a couple weeks, and then they kind of take the footage of that and make it in this YouTube video. Is it the same actors pretty regularly, or is it a whole new cast of people? Because these people are so funny, but there seems to be such a familiarity with it that you would see in like a sketch or improv troupe, where it feels like they know exactly. I mean, obviously they've rehearsed this a million times, but it's like they know exactly how to play off of each other in such a beautiful way. And I think of like Jafar talking to his captain, and that snippy back and forth is just so beautiful, but it feels like an improv game to a certain point, more than it feels like a scripted dialogue. And that's to the credit of it. Like, it's so witty.
I could be wrong, but I believe that Star Kid got started by folks who were attending the theater department at the University of Michigan.
Yeah, it was.
So for a while, it was cast members would be students who were also going to school who would be in the same area to audition for Star Kid. And so if you were going to be in town for a few years getting your degree, and you could also be a part of Star Kid, that would give them a semi-regular cast that would kind of rotate in and out with the school year.
And one of the founding members is Darren Criss. Do you know who that is?
I saw the name and it looked familiar, but I couldn't place my finger on why I knew the name.
He was in Glee. He
Okay.
played. There's a queer couple in Glee. He was, the most popular member of the Warblers.
Blaine, yeah.
Yeah, he played
Blaine.
Blaine. And if you saw his face, you'd know it because he's just in so many. He's just pretty famous.
He's
these
so
days.
handsome.
He is so handsome. Yeah, but I looked up what famous people came out of it, and it is more Broadway stars than anything. But it was just really cool to see that it was like a really cool jumping off point for, like Second City is for things. Star Kids is like a little baby version of that.
Well, and I think that that's the thing that surprised me at first because, like, when it first started, I'm like, this is really funny, but it's, in my mind, I'm like, this is definitely like a comedy group that just happens to love musicals. And then towards the end, I was like, no, this is a musical group that loves comedy.
Yeah.
And, like, that's a weird distinction to make, but it's like, it is a dramatic distinction because a comedy group that loves musicals is gonna go for the joke 100% of the time and sometimes miss the heart.
Mm-mm.
Whereas a musical group that loves comedy knows that at its core, a musical only works
That's
if
right.
there's heart.
That's right.
And I think that that's, again, why The Creature fails so much compared to the rest of these is that there is really no heart in The Creature show.
There's just
It
special
is-
effects. Like you said,
It's special
the last
effects,
5
and it's
minutes,
like you
go to see like
you know that it's like you're feeding the beast that is Universal by doing it. Like you're not doing it out of a love or a passion. You're doing it out of an obligation of they want us to make this, so let's make it.
it's like you were saying
versus-
about Grease, when they brought a car on stage
Yeah.
was so exciting. I'm like, they brought a boat on stage and then raised it up on wires to make it look like it was floating for a swimming acrobatics scene.
Like it's spectacle with no heart. And I think that every other show, even Carrie with all of its weirdness, has elements of heart. That's why I said, like, I feel like the biggest fumble in Carrie is that it's based on the book and movie Carrie.
Mhm.
Because like there's something that makes the sweet song seem so dumb because you know how the story ends and you're like, why are we doing this? Like, why are we doing these like emotional, heartfelt songs? Like, this is about a telekinetic girl. And it's very sad how the people treated her that led to this massacre. But at the end of the day, we're talking about a movie about we're talking about a telekinetic girl, where if it was just a more like surface level story about it, like if this was just She's All That the musical or something, I feel like those, you could literally, like, all joking aside, you could take all of the songs from Carrie and produce She's All That the musical using almost all of these songs, and I think it's a more successful movie to screen adaptation because it makes more sense, because it's not stemming from like one of the most iconic horror movies of all time.
Well, and that was kind of my issue with Carrie was an expectation that's built in, knowing the source material.
Yeah.
Was like, ooh, a horror musical, nice. And
Yeah,
it's
like
not, it's not very scary or horrifying.
No, you could have the greatest songs that have ever been written, but if those songs are in Night of the Living Dead the musical, it's gonna sound ridiculous that these songs are happening. Like,
Star Kids songs had dramatic tension, had pull. You were stressed, you were empathetic, you were brought into the mindset of the characters, and with Carrie, I felt like learning more about Carrie's feelings and her mother's feelings kind of withdrew some of the horror tension that might have been there.
I already mentioned South Park once before, but I want to mention them again because Trey and Matt have had such a long history of loving musicals. Like, from the fact that their very first movie, the very first project they ever did was a musical with Cannibal the Musical. But like, this is to the credit of Twisted. The South Park musical, the movie that they made that is a musical for South Park, is legitimately one of the best musicals that has ever been released in theaters. It is a well-constructed musical that hits all these different types of music, and it's, like, at points, very technically challenging. And I think that that's the other big thing I have to say about Twisted is, like, some of these songs are, like, technically interesting, constructed songs. Whereas, like, Carrie and even 9 to 5, as much as I love 9 to 5, Dolly Parton's not like the artist that you go to for like tons of crazy key changes and like melody switch ups and stuff. She's a songwriter. She writes pop songs, and like 9 to 5 had that pop song feel. Twisted really captures all of those things that makes you love musical theater, and it makes me think of like in that South Park musical, there's that song La Resistance.
Yes.
Where it's like every song that you've already heard in the musical
march.
is coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's all coming back together, and it's this march, and it's this tribute to La Miz, and it's all these like different things happening. And Twisted captures so much more of that than almost any other show that we watched. Like Twisted feels just as much a love letter for Disney adults as it's like a love letter to musical theater nerds, which is weird that it's like the most off Broadway show that we could have possibly watched. But it feels so much more passionate than even stuff like Carrie and 9 to 5 that did have Broadway runs at some point, but they feel very like locked into whatever time period they're being written by, and it doesn't like pay homage to the history of musicals the way that Twisted really felt like it was homaging every type of musical. Like it's both pulling things directly from
Disney,
like the 90s Disney musicals, while also paying tribute to the musicals of like the golden era and like modern day musicals all in like one giant package.
And speaking to the great writing in Twisted, I mean, the name also pays off in how many twists there are in the script.
Oh my God, we have to
the
talk
story
about
folds back into itself so many times, and I want to. Every character is so well developed. You can rewatch it with the intent to appreciate the musical as Aladdin's story, even though it's Jafar's story. And for Jafar or for Jasmine, they're also fully fleshed out. That they have a complete arc that you can appreciate individually, but even better when they tie into one another.
Since we're talking about outstanding performances and characters, and you're talking about twists, Jeff Blim.
Oh,
when he reveals that he killed his parents and we get a split personality moment from Aladdin, I was like, this is insane how good this back and forth between like douchey bro Aladdin and serial killer Aladdin interacting
and it's
with
live
each other.
on stage. It's like the Gollum
it's an acting masterpiece.
Yeah.
This is definitely the watch Twisted show, and I am in agreement. Yes.
Is there anything else you guys want to say about Twisted or any other show?
It was my favorite of them. I mean, I loved 9 to 5 for obvious reasons, but I really did think Twisted was the best.
I think what my closing like obviously I think all of them have their positives and negatives. Right. Twisted's definitely my favorite. It's the one that I will most likely revisit.
Oh, yeah.
9 to 5 is the one I'd be most likely to see if there was a local theater production of it. Like, I think I would have a blast seeing that in a live experience. Carrie is worth watching and learning the history of because it's so just out there. It's kind of like watching, like, Plan 9 from Outer Space or The Exorcist 2, The Heretic, where it's just like so many misfires that it's like hard to comprehend. I do think that Rogers had my favorite song out of all of the things that we watched because I love that opening song that's in that very
the U.S. opening night.
But even Creature, as much as we've been dunking on Creature, it is like you have to see this. Like us explaining the ending of Creature does it no justice. You do kind of have to see it to believe it, to see this giant prop and how off the rails it goes. So there's like a soft recommend for all 5 of these, but Twisted is like the
hands down.
Make it a point, get some popcorn, bring some friends over, like have a good time with it. Yeah.
That's awesome. Before we sign off, is there anything else you guys want to talk about or promote?
First of all, thank you for having me. This was a blast.
Thank you, man.
I try to always say yes to these types of offers. Like, I love podcasting. I have so many podcasters that I look up to, and I would love for any of them to be on my show. And I kind of made a promise to myself that if a fan's got a show, I'll be there.
That's awesome.
I'll be there to support. This was a lot of fun. This was a ton of fun. For the people who are listening, I don't know. I know most of your stuff is on YouTube, so if you're already on YouTube listening to this, swing on over to Geekscape TV afterwards. Check out Internet Supreme Court. check out, we do a show every Friday called What Won This Week. Again, because things are so uncertain and everything seems so dire, we wanted to create a show where people can just bring one positive thing that happened to them that week out into the open to give the world a little bit of hope each week.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And then all of the shows that I produce. So the very quick way I run down the schedule is just going through the week. Mondays, it's Christmas 365, an all-year-round Christmas podcast. Tuesdays, it's YAOK, a podcast about young adult novels. Wednesdays is One Hit Thunder, a podcast where we break down every one-hit wonder that you can imagine and try to let you know if it's good or bad. Thursdays is Horror Movie Night, where we watch and discuss some of the most bombastic and strange horror films from the 80s, 90s, and beyond. Friday nights is Weird Algorithm, which is my weekly Weird Al podcast. And Sundays is Christian Cringe, which is a podcast in which me and my friend Katie dive into the wild era of the 90s and early 2000s where there seemed to just be a Christian alternative to everything. So we're watching and diving into those and trying to see, like, what holds up, Five Iron Frenzy, what doesn't, McGee and me. And trying to find the good in all of the good and the bad in all of those things. But also Internet Supreme Court, that's the newest thing. That's the big thing I'm pushing. Check out Internet Supreme Court on Geekscape TV. It's a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Thank you again for being on the show, Matt. This was awesome. Lucy, thank you for joining us as well.
Thank you.
Thank you to everybody for listening, and we'll see you next time.
From the screen to the stage we fly, under spotlights reaching skies, every scene a brand new page, come alive from screen to stage.
Don't you tell me what I can or can't do. Those days are over. And if I want to have an affair or play sex games or do M&Ms, you can't stop me.